I put up the poll question because of the contract situations for both quarterbacks. The Raiders lost, yes, but you got a little bit of a taste of what Marcus Mariota might look like in a John Gruden offense. Derek Carr in 2021 is due a salary of $19.625 million. That'll get him over $100 million for the contract that he signed several years ago. But if they release him, according to SpotRack, which is a pretty good contract source site, they would only have, the Raiders would, a $2.5 million cap hit. So he counts $22.1 million on the cap if he is under contract. But if they were to release him, he would only cost $2.5 million on the dead cap money. So they basically have given him all of the big money that they owe him under the contract. Marcus Mariota would cost roughly $10 million next year. So the first question that is out there that a lot of you voted in last year, and there were a ton of different comments last night, there were a ton of different comments rolling in, but I thought it was interesting. Thousands and thousands of you voted, and 2/3 of you said you would rather have Marcus Mariota for $10 million a year than Derek Carr for $22 million a year. So I bring in you, Dub. What would you say about that situation? Would you rather have Derek Carr for $22 million or Marcus Mariota for $10 million? And by the way, if you're taking Derek Carr, then you know you're going to have to re-sign him to a new contract, probably paying him $30 million a year in the near future, right? This is not a situation where suddenly you're able to keep him at that same rate. You're going to have to sign him to a long-term deal. One of these guys is going to want money going forward, and certainly the reason why the Raiders signed Mariota for 2 years and gave him the money that they did was because they believed, maybe John Gruden, somebody in the organization, believed that Mariota could be the quarterback of the future because they weren't 100% convinced on Derek Carr.
Well, here's the way I see it. The Raiders have a lot of issues, but all of them are on the defensive side of the ball. If you sign Marcus Mariota and roll with him for a pretty discounted price, less than half the price of Derek Carr, that gives you some flexibility to spend that money on the defensive side of the ball where the Raiders are in dire need of some help in the secondary. We saw last night, and we've seen throughout the year, this secondary is just not very good. And if you can't stop anybody, if you can't hold anybody to under 30 points, you're not really going to win that many football games no matter who your quarterback is. They got a really good running back in Josh Jacobs. They got one of the best tight ends in the league in Darren Waller. I think there's enough weapons surrounding whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Mariota or Carr. In this situation, it would be Mariota. I think there's plenty of weapons around him, and his ability to use his legs, we saw last night, that was a huge difference maker in this game. There was a lot of fourth down conversions, some plays he was able to make with his legs that kept Las Vegas in the game. So to me, this is almost a no-brainer because you're able to get a similar quarterback for a discounted price, plus you'd be able to use that extra money to help fill in some of those holes on the defensive side of the football.
The issue with Mariota has never been his ability to win or his talent or his athleticism or all of those things. It has always been whether or not he can stay healthy. And so, he carried the ball and had a lot of success in the read option last night. I'd be curious if teams start to prepare for that. But there are a lot of really good offensive weapons, as you mentioned, on this Raiders team. And so I think it's a really intriguing question. It's certainly one that the Raider Brain Trust has had thoughts about, or else they wouldn't have signed Mariota to the deal that they did to bring him in to try to push a little bit, at least going forward with Derek Carr. I mean, look at this. You're talking about a guy in Mariota who has got 70, it counts like he has a bunch of different money that he can earn in the year going ahead. But for next season, he's under contract for $10 million. And so they're paying him $9 million for this season, $10 million for next year. And if they decide to let him go, remember, Mariota's only 27 years old. So I would think there would be a lot of teams that watched his performance, and if he gets to start the next 2 games, we'll see how he does going forward from there. But I would think there have to be a lot of people who watched and thought, hey, if I'm in the neighborhood of needing a quarterback, that could make a big difference. For instance, if you are the New England Patriots right now, would you rather have Cam Newton, what you've had so far from Cam Newton this year, or would you rather have Marcus Mariota? If you are the Chicago Bears, are they maybe sitting back saying, man, why in the world did we make the commitment that we did to Nick Foles when Nick Foles, in the grand scheme of things, is not as good as Marcus Mariota? Typically, he hasn't played that well as Mariota did. Now, it's also just one game, but there's a lot of teams out there that are in need of a decent quarterback. If you're Denver, are you sitting around saying, I thought Mariota looked a lot better against the Chargers than maybe Drew Lock has looked this year? There are a lot of teams out there. The 49ers, are they really committed long-term to Jimmy Garoppolo? I think there's going to be some bidders for Mariota, and I think the Raiders, if Mariota plays like this in the next couple of games, people say, well, they lost this game. I understand. But the reason they lost the game, I think, was the play calling of John Gruden down the stretch once they got a 1st and goal. If I remember correctly, Dub, they ran the ball twice with Jacobs, didn't they? Just between the tackles. And then on 3rd and 5, they roll Marcus Mariota out, and the play call is for him to try to throw the ball to the fullback. And even if the fullback had caught the pass, he was not going to be able to score on that play. So I don't understand how you could blame Marcus Mariota for that. Now, he did throw a little bit behind a receiver on the tip ball interception. Maybe you can argue that ball should have been caught. He missed down the middle on a seam route. He missed a guy, Aguilar, I think, and got him hit pretty well. But he hasn't played in over a year, so I think he was far better than you would anticipate a guy would be, coming in cold off the bench and making all the plays that he did, converting on 4th down as many times as he did, all of those things. I think they all kind of work in Marcus Mariota's favor, at least in that respect, which is why so many of you voted last night for Marcus Mariota at $10 million a year over being able to make the choice to go with Derek Carr. Again, tens of thousands of you weighing in, 65% of you saying you liked Marcus Mariota at a $10 million contract compared to Derek Carr at a $22 million contract. That's a choice that the Raiders may have to make in the offseason. And frankly, now that Carr is injured, I doubt they're going to play him the last 2 games now that they're sitting at 7-7 and out of the playoff race. I would think Mariota might well be the guy starting for the final 2 weeks of the season to see what exactly makes sense going forward.